Hello ladies and gentlemen, Willie here. Well, the TBC beta is out and I've been relatively quiet since it has been. Of course, I got in, obligatory YouTuber, streamer, privilege comment goes right here. And Blizzard did put out a second wave today, I believe, but there's still very few people in. I can do a /who at any time of the day and there's between about 20 to 40 people on. It'd be great if we just got more bodies in. MMOs are always better with more people. So I set out to test some stuff. I got in the beta, that's the purpose of it, but I wanted to try and test some different stuff or see how things would work. There were so many people running into the questing and dungeons that I thought I'd try and look elsewhere and see what I could find. I'm not exactly how useful this will all be, but hey, here we go. I guess first of all, it felt a bit strange to be back in Outland again, and it's different from how things felt in the classic beta, but I didn't get in that till the very final round of invites. I was relearning literally everything back then, so TBC does feel quite a bit more familiar to me, which is good because there is no add-on integration at the moment, so it's like a memory test of can you remember which quest goes where. Let's take a look at what I found then. So we've got some good points and we've got some not so good points. First of all, I just wanted to talk over the character templates a bit. So I think to some degree this will be what the character boost will end up looking like. First of all, they have a bunch of green set of gear. This will not be what boosted characters will have. I'm 100% confident in saying that. We've already heard that they will have dungeon blue quality gear, whereas these guys are decked out in some random greens that seem to have just been made for the purpose of the beta. And the gear is, it's pretty bad, to be honest. So while I don't think anything can be inferred from the level of gear, some of the other things these characters have might be of interest. Classes started with 0 non-class professions, meaning rogues had capped lockpicking and poisons. I would expect this to be there for the character boost. Druid had capped herbalism for some reason though. Maybe they're just preparing druids for their inevitable role in the expansion. Every class had capped weapon skill for all styles, which is fantastic news for warriors and especially hunters on that one. Characters had their respective ability quests done, so shamans have totems, druids have their forms, warriors have stances. I also checked out a bit more in depth, in particular on the hunter. They do start with a pet, which is a level 60 wolf, which looked like one of the ones from Terakar Forest, but it has abilities like the Blackrock Warg from UBRS at the moment. I also had a check of what the hunter had in the beast training abilities, and it looks like you'll be needing to retrain stuff in TBC, which is how it was back then, so that's fine enough. Also, I went to check on the stables to see if we had any other surprises, and yeah, there were 2 of them actually, which were both being kept in stable slots that I hadn't actually bought yet. When I took these pets out, they weren't too happy with being left in there either. I had a Frost Saber, the ones you get from Winterspring, who was rather unhappy, and a Diseased Wolf like the ones from Western Plaguelands, who was so unhappy, the very moment I actually took him out the stable, he instantaneously ran off. Very sad. One more thing to add for templates. Could they have some gold, 150 riding skill, and maybe an epic mount in that bag as well? I know we can trade stuff over from mains or scrounge from other players, it's the beta so who cares, but it would save some time and effort and there's no real benefit to having us run around at 60% speed, it just slows us down. Also about mounts in TBC, their cost is overall reduced when compared to Classic, so if you don't have an epic mount at the moment and aren't in a rush to buy one, wait until the pre-patch and you will be able to save yourself a few hundred gold. You'll also be able to buy your 60% speed mount at level 30 now. We go from the format of you need X riding skill like Raptor or Meccano Strider to just riding skill, as it is with any other professions. The racial restrictions for certain mounts still apply in TBC, so Night Elves can't use Meccano Striders. Also, I came across this when running about, and man, I know Will of Forsaken's OP, but a passive one? Man, that's too much, Blizzard. The NPC that teleports us to Caverns of Time is in there, but I didn't have the option to do so because I don't have the rep. I could see this being a feature from Phase 1 in the game, or maybe Caverns of Time will be where the summoning alts will go these days. I also went to check on Primal Vendors, of which there are 3. There's a neutral one in Shatrath, there's one in Silvermoon City, and there's one in the Exodar. I did only test the Shatrath and Exodar ones, but they are both limited stock, and this recipe will be extremely highly in demand. I did buy one and then come back 2.5 hours later though, and it had already restocked, so maybe the duration won't be too much of an issue, but I imagine people have alts parked outside of this thing, trying to buy them up and flipping them on the auction house in the early game. People with big beefy Taurens have tested melee leeway, and yeah, it's looking a bit like this. I was surprised with how little leeway was brought up, and that it hasn't been put in the same boat as spell batching was. Although spell batching's implementation was questionable, but it was clear that it was something that should change for the expansion. I feel kind of the same way about leeway, even if it's correct, which Blizzard does say yes, this is correct and it's what it looked like. It seems a bit much. And I know there's spam strafing in this clip, for example, but having a Tauren warrior chasing a Tauren druid around a pillar is a very realistic scenario. Also, this makes Tauren hunters just strictly worse than any other race for that particular class. Also, a change to cat form was made in 2.2 for druids, apparently about cat range, so night elves match the range that Taurens have. So there is a history of balancing attack range for certain classes where there are racial imbalances. Let me know your thoughts on this, go Blizz-like, or make the range a bit more realistic. Speaking of Blizz-like, our old friend Drums of Battle aren't quite dead yet. Blizzard did a post following the players discovering that there are now greater Drums of Battle. The differences are regular old ones have been downgraded to uncommon and have a shorter range, whereas the greater ones are rare and have a 40-yard range. They both still have the same effect of giving the player 5% haste. Greaters need a higher leatherworking level and more materials to make, but the price of drums will be a complete non-issue, I think. They both have 50 charges and are basically only ever used in raid content consistently. I think when players heard that drums were on the radar at BlizzCon, there was a lot of people who were very happy with that change being made. So I'd like to give some feedback on this initial design decision. Not good. This really isn't it. This won't change the fact that in order to maximize your performance, you will need at least 20 players with leatherworking. People will just have to make sure they get really stacked for the lesser drums pop, which will actually just be really annoying as it will happen every 30 seconds. Imagine the tilt on missing your drum pop twice in a row, and that won't go away till phase 4, as Blizzard mentioned in the post, considering the greater drum recipe to be dropped from Zulaman. This actually takes the problem of drums and makes it worse for over half the game's duration. If this subject of drums is important enough to the players and to Blizzard to merit this level of discussion, and for them to consider actually creating an entirely new item for the expansion, I think it should aim to hit the kind of nerfs people are looking at when they're talking about drums. And the goal will be to make less people need leatherworking. That is the end result of what needs to happen here. And there are solutions that the community has already put forwards, which I'd like to quickly reiterate here. Add some kind of exhaustion type debuff that lasts for 2 minutes after your party has benefited from a drum effect. This cuts the number of leatherworkers required from 20 down to 5, which isn't unreasonable to have one person per group who would want leatherworking for reasons other than drums. Make drums affect the whole raid. I don't know if this is possible due to how things are still balanced around being group-wide in TBC, but it's an idea. This would also cut the number of drummers needed down to 5. Remove the leatherworking requirements so they become a consumable you carry like flasks or potions, or to be considered like an item enhancement you get from another profession, such as leg armor or enchants. The answer to this, regardless of what it ends up being, will be to reduce the number of people who have to take the profession only for drums. Also, if you went down the route, as some other things are in TBC, with having a lesser version which could be used by anyone, then a greater version only for the leatherworker, that would make literally everyone go leatherworking, so don't do that either. So that's my little piece on drums. I know it's still very early days, but I think it's important to give feedback on this. Also, I was reading apparently the Hunter one button macro won't be quite as good as it's being made out to be. I still have the Is It Any Better Now video for the Hunter coming, well, relatively soon. It looks like I'm going to have to be rewriting and re-recording some of that. But if you do know anything else about that, then hit me up in the comments, because there's not been overly too much research into it. Oh, one last thing actually. You know when you're on a mount and you press an ability, and then if the ability you've pressed isn't off GCD, it takes a GCD before it actually does anything? Yep, that is finally gone with TBC. It was a feature in Classic which was specifically put in, and it wasn't down to spell batching or anything, so I'm super happy that isn't a thing anymore. That's about it though. I hope more beta waves come out relatively soon, as there's not too many people online day to day at the moment. Let me know what you think about everything here, especially about drums and melee leeway, and as always, thank you so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you in the next one very soon.